Hi everyone, this isn't technically part of the Remote Viewing 101 series, but I did want to give some examples of what I believe it means to be a conscious creator. To consciously create a reality that you have chosen. Well, no matter where you are in the spiritual or scientific spectrum, all roads lead to calming down the conscious mind and baselining a more tranquil state of being so that you can perceive accurately and think clearly in a nonlinear perspective. Remote viewing, amongst many other tools such as past life regressions or future life projections found in hypnosis or trance states, are key to allowing your awareness to see potential futures of yourself based on decisions that you have yet to make. This is why so many messages from ET seem to hint to the idea of becoming a more conscious creator as the next step in our evolution, and having to take ownership and responsibility over one's actions once you are aware of yourself and your power. Quite literally, with diligent meditation, remote viewing, and structured hypnosis or trance states, you are able to see elements of what your future will become based on parameters that you have set prior to the meditative experimentation. For example, I've been engaging in remote viewing and structured self-hypnosis or trance states to look at potential futures for my life for quite some time now, and I have found many lifetimes that seem quite positive and just as many that are actually quite negative. Now that I'm aware of what decisions could likely lead me down those negative paths, the responsibility now lies on myself to follow through or avoid those decisions that would lead me down whatever path is in question. This is why remote viewing is so valuable. Not only can you discover the secrets of the universe, but you can project your awareness out into the future in states of structured meditation and stillness, which warn you about unforeseen consequences for these actions. Actually, the opposite can happen as well. You may find timelines that are absolutely wonderful, and you may double down on those activities as you have seen that doing so would lead you to a timeline that you truly do wholeheartedly love. Just to name a few examples I've explored in my own studies of self, I saw myself going to Mars in the early days of its colonization by humans, and I promptly was enslaved by Draconians, who easily overtook our colony, and I was put into a tank similar to those used in the Matrix movies to house humans as batteries for the machines. But the vat of liquid was green, and I died in that vat. However, my story didn't end there. Next thing I knew, I was this hybrid being with a very strong dark energy. I was at least 2 feet taller than I am now, and my right arm was very reptilian. I had 3 fingers which had claw-like nails, black, and the green skin on just one of my hands, but the rest of me seemed more like myself, with much more wild hair than I have now. Honestly, I was in awe at the sheer psychic power and presence that I held. However, I was dismayed at how ruthless and devoid of positive emotions, like compassion, I was. I saw myself blow up a ship with one hand outstretched using pure psychic powers, and I was seemingly on a very violent and aggressive crusade, assaulting and harming many beings. That seemed like a deal breaker for me, so that timeline was not one that I'm going to choose. In fact, another red flag was this very loud, pleading version of my soon-to-be enslaved self who was telepathically yelling at me with this, well, he was stuck in this line, and basically when the reptilians came in, I was probing actually just for the first interaction where I had with an ET, and I saw myself just standing in this line, and psychically I was bound. I couldn't move, but I could see through my eyes, and a Draco just walked right past me, and everyone else, all the other humans, we were all in this line. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And I was pleading to myself, please don't choose this path. Do not abandon your friends and family to go down this path. This is not what you wanted, and this is not the way you ever wanted to do things. And then he died in that vat and was hybridized, and his consciousness seemed to just be this IV drip that was feeding this other body that was completely programmed away from having any of the positive emotions that I have today in this lifetime. Very different. Anyway, after he was yelling out, "This isn't the way," I realized that this was a very powerful experience, but I had to face some of my fears to learn from this timeline, and ultimately I decided that this wasn't for me. And I thus dropped the idea of trying to join the first colonists on Mars. Now, that doesn't guarantee that this will happen to those who choose to go down that path. Nothing is set in stone, of course. However, this is an example of how remote viewing and meditative states can guide you in your future endeavors as you consciously are creating your reality. You are consciously creating because now, with these tools, you can see what is around the corner for these big decisions that you may make in your life. Often in beginner nonlinear perception methods, I equate the data acquisition process to pulling a few slides from a slideshow projector, if you remember those things. You often don't get the whole reel, but you get enough to get a general idea of what you wanted to figure out, and nothing stops you from exploring these things further. The more positive timelines I saw, just to share some of those happier stories, had one thing in common. In all of those timelines, I prioritized unconditional love. This evolutionary path involves exploring organic psychic training on Earth, basically no hybridization or cybernetic implants, and cultivating love and compassion with my friends, family, and my earthly community far more than ever before. I am convinced that compassion is a muscle that can be worked on and built upon, and taking an athlete's approach to that was a big hallmark of these timelines. After some time building up compassion while organically training my psychic abilities, I then made a choice. On one hand, I left the planet at a far older age, but my psychic abilities became very advanced once I got off the planet. I learned so much more once I got off-world, but in another timeline, I actually stayed on planet Earth. For all of these, I looked at the moment of death as well, and the moment of death for the one who was off-world was one where he found some massive tree that seemed to dwarf the redwoods, but he meditated underneath that tree, and the tree sort of had a golden glow to it, but my body just had this blue mist evaporate from me, and that was the way I died. It was quite peaceful and incredibly pretty to watch, to be honest. The other one was in a bed, but seemingly surrounded by a large family that I had built up over my extended time here on Earth. His psychic abilities were not as flashy as the other timeline off-world who reminded me of Avatar: The Last Airbender, to be honest. But he did have some very impressive abilities, far more advanced than the average state of psychic ignorance that most people find themselves in when traversing the mundane aspects of our corporeal reality today. Each lived much longer lives than the average human, but even with these positive projections, I wanted to see more. I won't go into the cyborg realities that I looked into, where I invested more of my life far heavily into exploring the artificial intelligence tract of evolution, but needless to say, those were very wild rides as well, and one particular lifetime was so long-lived that it seemed to dwarf all of written history as we know it today. However, he did get blown up in some sort of space combat Star Trek ship-to-ship battle scenario, and then it looked like he ran right into a death trap out there very far off into the cosmos. But he was very much a fully cybernetic body at that point, fundamentally different from the body that you see speaking to you here today. The point of this video isn't to wow you with any of these stories, it is just to let you know that you can use meditative states and structured methodologies like QHHT, the various remote viewing methods, structured trance states, and so on to see the realities that you are thinking of diving into before you dive into it. In my opinion, that is the very concrete way of understanding what it means to be a conscious creator. To have a dream, to look into the future to see the potential outcomes of said dream, and then to decide if the effort you are gearing up to put into that dream is worth it as things are, or if you should tweak the dream or your approach to the dream slightly, just to make sure that outcome is a bit more favorable for you. Anyways, that is it everyone. I hope this all made sense. Happy New Year, and remember to pursue psychic abilities.